Welcome to CDN Women in Leadership podcast. My name is Valerie Jackman, Leadership Lead at CDN.
And my name is Joanna Campbell. I'm the Principal and Chief Exec of Dumfries and Galloway College.
This podcast is designed for women who are working in education and aspire to progress their career to the next level. The podcast focuses on what women can do and how they can leverage their strengths to advance and thrive in their career.
Today, we'll be exploring the topic of leading with purpose, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest, Clare Reid, who is the Policy Director for SCDI. Welcome, Clare. It's a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Clare, could you perhaps start by telling us about your own leadership journey to where you are now?
Yes, sure. So I'm the Policy and Public Affairs Director of the Scottish Council for Development and Industry. We're a membership organisation which looks to bring businesses and civic society together around the big issues facing Scotland's economy. In my job, I'm responsible for overseeing our policy work, which includes major reports, events, consultations, and also for our engagement with governments, both in Scotland and at Westminster.
Great. And Clare, I'm always interested in how people work their way through their career to their leadership roles. What were the sort of pivot points or key milestones in that journey for you?
Yeah, sure. So I studied economics and marketing in Scotland, and then I went to work in London for a small consultancy who specialised in economic forecasting. That was a great opportunity because it was a small organisation and we were given quite a lot of responsibility quite quickly. They were then bought by a large organisation, so a big global data company, and that was really interesting because that kind of took what was, a great senior role in a small business into something which was much broader as part of a global PLC. So I was promoted a few times within that organisation and eventually became head of their economics team. So that was Experian, the data company that lots of people will know. And then about sort of 9 years ago, I had the opportunity to move from there to the built environment. So I went to work for a large family-run construction and housing company to head up a new research team, which was a big change for me, that really exciting one. And then 2 years ago, I was invited to come and join the SCDI team, and I haven't looked back.
That's brilliant. So, Clare, just remaining with the work that you're doing at the moment at SCDI published a new strategy, a new purpose strategy called Now's the Time for Purpose, which set out the need for Scotland to define its economic purpose and engage in purposeful business. There's too many purposes in that sentence. What do you mean by that in terms of the content of the strategy?
Yes, so I was fortunate to be one of the commissioners, and SCDI led the secretariat for the commission of what was called the Business Purpose Commission for Scotland. So the report you're referencing is the output of that commission, which was a group of businesses, academics and others in civic society. And they got together to answer the question, which is, what should purposeful business mean in Scotland and how do we encourage more of it? And purposeful business, as you have rightly identified, is something that can mean different things to different people. So the way that we defined it was, and this was building on the work of the British Academy, is any business that's looking to solve the problems of people and the planet profitably. So, organisations like John Lewis are quite often the ones that people would recognise most readily from that. And
I'm quite fascinated at this focus that we have now in recent times on purpose as opposed to focusing on vision and mission. And I'm quite interested in your views on, organisationally, do you think that enriches organisations in terms of connecting with people and planet?
Well, I think there's lots of research to suggest that purpose is a positive driver of growth for different reasons. So, for example, our research found that businesses that are purposeful or define themselves as purposeful are more likely to achieve high growth. So there's lots of evidence that suggests in the next 15 years, because they're more aligned to some of the big challenges that we face in terms of climate and broader society, they're expected to see higher levels of growth. There's also lots of evidence that they are more attractive to younger workers because of that purpose that they put at the heart of what they do. So our vision as a commission was really for Scotland to become the home of purposeful business by 2030. We made a dozen or so recommendations for business, for the finance sector, for the education sector, and both the UK and Scottish governments on how they could take that forward. So, for example, in the education sector, we recommended that purpose become a mandatory learning outcome from training and education, and we're looking forward to engaging with the education sector on how that might be achieved.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Thanks for that.
Yeah, it is really interesting because you know, I work in education, and purpose is something that people are really searching for. We're in quite a turbulent time just now, not just in education, but in business as well. And just this morning, we were talking about Simon Sinek and the why, and you know, what's the purpose behind what we're doing, and really focusing on that. And I know, Clare, you joined us at a conference last year where Paul Pullman spoke about, he's the former chief executive Unilever, and he spoke about how important it was to move from profit and that focus on profit to really kind of honing in on purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are lots of forces now driving in the same direction from this respect. So I mentioned a minute ago that obviously lots of employers at the moment are struggling to attract and retain staff. And there is evidence, certainly for younger workers, that this is really attractive, that, you know, companies put purpose at the heart of what they do. There's lots of evidence that buyers, and obviously women hold a lot of the purse strings, that you know, we're more likely to be prompted to buy something if we can see that it has a value and a purpose. It's maybe, you know, more environmentally friendly, or it's doing something else for society. And also the financial services sector are really, through reporting standards, are really now starting to hold lots of companies to account and say, what is it that you're doing that's improving the planet and society and not damaging it. And a really good example of kind of how seriously the sector's taking it is, you know, one of our co-chairs of the Business Purpose Commission for Scotland was Amanda Young, who's just Chief Sustainability Officer at Aberdeen. And she's a great advocate and spoke very strongly about the role that the financial services sector has to play in driving that push towards purpose.
Yeah. So do you think then that leading with purpose is something that is that maybe women excel at, or, you know, that they're particularly drawn to it? Do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say certainly from the research that we undertook, it'd be hard to sort of say one way or the other. I think we had lots of great examples of purpose-led female leaders, but also lots of great examples of men who are leading purposeful organisations. I mentioned Amanda as one of the examples. I think where there was probably more evidence is that just in terms of that support for purposeful business. So women are certainly more likely to be in favour of some of the aspects of what makes businesses purposeful. So if we think about the kind of people part of it, that includes things like paying the real living wage. And some of the survey evidence showed that obviously women are more supportive of organisations that pay the real living wage, maybe than men are. You know, possibly because they are more likely to be in those occupations that are not as well paid. And also that in the general population, women are more likely to buy from purpose-led organisations than others. So I think there is something which suggests that women are drawn to purpose-led organisations, whether it's as consumers or as organisations they want to work for. And as I say, anecdotally, there's lots of great purpose-led leaders. Some of them working in purpose-led organisations, but not always in organisations which have put purpose at their centre. But also equally lots of great examples of men doing the same.
Mm-hmm. And I think there's much more of a narrative now of where organisations are trying to show that they're purposeful and they're led by purpose rather than profit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can think of, across all of the work that we do at SCDI, I can think of lots of, and this is particularly true of younger leaders, lots of examples of new businesses being started, new ventures being spun out of universities and colleges, and in the spaces of climate, in how technology can address some of the kind of social challenges that we've got, whether it's loneliness, healthcare, etc. So it's really something that I think is driving a lot of new entrepreneurs, lots of new business opportunities. So although it's something that I think people are kind of just getting to grips with, what does it actually mean? Mm-hmm. It is actually all around us and growing quite quickly.
And it's so encouraging to hear that the younger generation have that focus on purpose as well, isn't it? I think that, when there's all the other news that we hear about, to be able to recognise that, yes, there's that undercurrent and that underdrive of young people who are leading purposeful businesses. I think that's great. What do you think, Joanna?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've seen a lot of that advocacy and push for that real purposeful approach through addressing the climate emergency, for example. And really, it's been the younger generation that have been able to drive that forward. And in terms of, this is my experience in terms of recruiting staff, generally speaking, the people who are entering into the workforce are very particular about what they want to see from their employer in terms of, terms and conditions, ways of working, and does the organisation itself meet with their values? Mm-hmm. Now, that's a different approach, and I think it's definitely the right approach as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, my friend's son actually had what we perceived to be, a great job, and he just found it so stressful, and he was challenged. He was coming away questioning the values and where the focus was. And this is a young man in his early 20s, and he walked away from that job, much to his mum's horror. It's like, oh, you don't have another job, and he said, but I really can't stay there because it doesn't match the things that are important to me and is causing me a lot of anxiety. And of course, he's moved on to find something that does does fit with his own values better. But certainly, when I was younger, you wouldn't have walked away from something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something we've not touched on, but I think aligned to that is there's a lot more scrutiny of organisations talking about kind of their purpose, and I think that is coming from not just from younger people, from right across society, and I think that's something that anyone thinking about putting purpose at the heart of their organisation or engaging their staff or their customers in that really has to be clear about what it means and transparent about how it can be measured, because I think people are getting sort of very aware of I suppose purpose washing in the same way that greenwashing sometimes happens. So it's not to say that everyone has to do everything all at once, but it's just that you have to be quite transparent about the journey that you're on and what it is that you're really hoping to achieve and do.
Yeah, absolutely. What has worked for you, Claire? And how would you encourage others?
Yeah, so I think definitely finding something that you're really passionate about. And something that you can, I guess, work hard at. So, I mean, we all know that growing your career takes quite a lot of graft. And, when I started my career, I didn't really see it as an issue because it was something that I was really passionate about, and that led to other opportunities because I was happy to kind of, get involved in the work we were doing or take on extra responsibilities, for example. So I think whatever you're looking to do in your career, whether it is something that is obviously, purpose-led in the way that we've been talking about it, or purposeful to you in a different way, it's about connecting with the outcomes of the job that you're doing and where you can add value. So I think what's stood me well is working in either in organisations or on work that I can see there's some sort of outcome. When I worked in the built environment, I loved the fact that I could go and have a look at a fantastic college building or a whiskey distillery or some brilliant houses that we had built and actually say, I helped contribute to that in a very small way. So I think, yeah, being able to see what the outcome of your effort is really important as well.
Yeah. How about you, Joanna?
Yeah, well, I'm just reflecting on what Claire's saying there, and there's something very grounding about going back to what brought you to where you are today, if you see what I mean, in the sort of industry you are. And from my point of view, I always go back to the days when I was in the classroom and I was teaching, and it's very easy to, as a principal, it can be easy to forget that because it seems like such a long way away. But actually, I go back to that time that brought me into education and why I came into education, and ultimately it was to transform lives. And I think it's very important to just always remember what got you to, what brought you into the area that you work in today.
Mm.
Yeah, and I think like your example, it's not always apparent. Sometimes you have to try different things to see what fits or where you fit, and it might not be that organisation, but another organisation doing a similar role. So I never had a 5-year plan. So there is sometimes I think a bit of trial and error, isn't there, about where you fit and what job fits you.
Definitely. And reflecting on events of the last couple of months where we've seen two prime ministers of two very different countries actually resign from their post because of the, for a whole variety of reasons, and they're both women. And, I think it's important the fact that they have recognised, that getting that balance between being a leader, being a female leader, and all the other, challenges that life presents, and recognising that actually I've done a great job, but actually now's time to look at something else.
It's not unique to women because there are, I think, some male leaders now who are also, if I think of the leader of Santander, who stood down for kind of mental health reasons and also for his family. I think it's good that leaders are perhaps more able now to say, that's why it's a change. I'm choosing to do this for my own health or for my own family or for my own career. And I think that's maybe something that hasn't happened so readily in the past. So, that can only be a good thing if people feel they can do that. But yeah, I think it's good that people are sort of being a bit more honest and open about kind of the decisions that they're making and the choices that they're making.
Yeah, and really, really encourage that we might have more leaders take that kind of approach in the future.
I do wonder if there's maybe another podcast entirely, which is about sort of how people feel when they get to the top of their profession as well, because I guess lots of us are very ambitious for our careers, and you wonder whether sometimes whether people get to the top and it's the pinnacle of their profession, for example. Is it necessarily what they expected? And I think that's quite interesting as well. I'm not suggesting that's the case in the two examples you've given, but I think that has to be something, because it's quite easy to get on not necessarily a treadmill, but get sort of very focused on where you're going, sort of up the career ladder, without always necessarily stopping to say, is this still what I want, or is there something different that would make me equally happy?
Yes, I think you're right. And I also think there's something in there about, I have huge admiration for both Nicola Sturgeon and Jacinda Ardern, knowing when the time was right to step back. And there's a bit about, understanding when you've been your best self, and actually, are you able to continue to give that 100%? And if not, then being brave enough, as you said, Claire, to step aside and let somebody else come into that space and go away and do something else that's equally as fulfilling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Claire, I've taken a wee note of that we might put that on our list for future podcasts, because I think it's a great point. What do you do when you get there?
Yeah. And also, I suppose there's we're all living longer. The chances are that we're going to have, I never, when I started out in economics, I thought I would be working in economics forever. Then I went to work in the built environment, and that was a huge culture change, but a really exciting one, and I've no regrets about that. I really enjoyed that. Now gone into something slightly different. So I think all of those, I think what's quite hard to see sometimes, and I'm sure you'll both have experienced this, is is, what might come next. But the great thing is, people are living longer, they're having those careers which maybe have got a few different component parts and might go in some different directions, and there's still different options open to them. So I think that's a positive thing for both men and women, but particularly for women in their later careers.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I also recognise that women may have more than one thing happening. So some women, you may be on a board of a charity and you can contribute to that, and then you've got your own role, and you can. So it's not as if it's just the one track that we have to pursue anymore.
Absolutely.
Okay, so moving on then, Clare, is there any top tips that you would like to give women who want to progress their career and their leadership journey? What's your takeaway messages?
Yeah, I sort of feel a bit fraudulent answering this, because I feel like sort of my career has been, sort of a combination of luck, hard work, and sort of, happy accidents. But I mean, I think following your passion can only be a good thing. I think look for sort of gaps and opportunities in terms of places that you might add value, and you don't always see that yourself. Initially, maybe get help from others to kind of help you unlock that, because quite often your own unique combination of knowledge or experience could be applied somewhere really valuably that you haven't thought of. I would definitely say ask for help. I've always been pleasantly surprised by how many people, if you just say, oh, can you help me with experience of this, or can you introduce me to someone, or, I'd like to know more about why, then 9 times out of 10 people will help. And that's fantastic. But I think people are just sometimes afraid to ask. But I would just say sort of, you have the brass neck to ask, because what's the worst that can happen? Someone can only say no. And then I think the sort of third thing would be sort of have fun. It's a long time to be in work, and I think probably a lot of the great sort of career and network and personal, like friends that I've made and experience that I've had have resulted from just saying yes and okay, go on. Either I'll give it a go, or yes, I'll come to that event, or yes, I'll take on that responsibility. And more often than not, it works out, and you just never know where it's going to take you. And I think that's the fun part of your career, that you can't always plan out.
Be prepared for the unexpected then, Clare. Is that what you're saying?
Be prepared, and I suppose be willing to sort of say yes when actually you're a bit scared and your instinct is to say no. I think that's my experience anyway. It might not be the same for everyone.
I think those are wise words, and that asking for help piece that you mentioned there, that's really important. And actually, we had Audrey Cumberford, who's the principal of Edinburgh College, as a guest on one of our earlier podcasts, and she spoke about the power of networking, and that, what you had articulated there in terms of going out and speaking to people, asking for help. I think that's really, really important. That's come up a number of times in people that we've had on our podcast, Valerie, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And going out of your comfort zone, I think, as well. So, you talked about sort of that maybe women later in their careers might have a range of things, so I've come across great opportunities and also lots of great women in sort of non-executive roles, whether that's in, trustees in charities or in larger organisations. And I think those are kind of great opportunities for women as they kind of go, get on more experience in their career to sort of challenge themselves a little bit more, but they can be a little bit daunting initially, but a great experience. So yeah, and things like speaking opportunities, again, that's something where, sometimes people will take fright and think, oh, I can't do that. What do I know about that? How can I be on that panel? But actually, again, with a bit of preparation, and you can always do a bit of research beforehand. Who else is speaking? What's the interest? What have I got to add? I would really encourage people to take a few risks now and again.
The speaking aspect that you were going over there, that's one of these things that actually gets easier the more times that you do that. And the advice on looking out for non-exec opportunities, I would absolutely 100% advocate that. That's a brilliant a brilliant opportunity for people to reach into something that they're interested in, but also add value to that organisation as well. So great advice there, Claire.
Yeah, and I suppose the only thing that I would just add as well maybe is not forgetting those sort of others who are sort of coming up behind us. And actually that I think I feel now in my career I can learn a lot from younger women leaders that I work with, and men, but obviously we're talking about women in leadership, but and you know, thinking about where I can help them, but also where they can help me. I certainly don't have all the answers, and I'm still learning in a lot of areas. So yeah, I think it's sort of not forgetting to kind of look around and give others a hand up, I think, as you go through your journey, because we need the next generation of leaders to be coming through and getting the same opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, what a wonderful conversation, Claire. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we've come to the end now, but I really appreciate you coming along and sharing your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
So that's us at the end of today's episode. A big thank you to Clare Reid, and please join us for the next episode of our podcast, Women into Leadership.